All right, thank you, Lee. My name is Eric Rosh. I'm a planning administrator with the Orange County Planning Division. I just wanted to say first thanks to Lee and the District 1 office for inviting me to the meeting today. But I am going to share my screen. I've got a couple of brief slides. I know one of the topics on the agenda that everyone was really interested in is development in the area, particularly on the Reams Road corridor. So I've got just a few slides to run through kind of the lay of the land and what's being proposed. And then I believe we have some folks on the call who are going to address the Reams Road project as well, the improvements to Reams Road. So let me go ahead and share. Just want to check, is everyone able to see my screen? Look okay?
It looks great.
All right, great. I hear no specific objections, so I'll move on. So in terms of Oasis Cove, obviously folks in the room know essentially where you live. This was an area that was rezoned to R3, which is a multifamily district back in 1967. It seems to correspond with the announcement of Disney. That rezoning occurred right around the same time, but nothing was built on the site until 2007. So 40 years later, we saw the first development of the site. In the interim, between 67 and 2007, the area was incorporated into Horizon West. But this area, it already had its zoning. So I believe it was determined to be vested development. So this specific community doesn't follow Horizon West standards. This is one of the few areas within Horizon West where you've got conventional type R3 zoning that essentially predated the Horizon West standards, but the construction actually occurred after the Horizon West approvals. So that's just an interesting fact about Oasis Cove itself. In terms of the surrounding development, what's going on in the area, the most controversial project by far that's been in the Reams Road corridor recently was known as the Develop Cove project. As you can see on the screen here, this is Oasis Cove, designated R3 on the map. And the Develop Cove property is the large property immediately behind you guys. The majority of it is a Class 1 wetland. You can see this gray area on the screen, which is designated as a wetland. As I mentioned here on the slide, there's a long history to the site. It actually first came through when Commissioner Boyd was in office, and it came through as a comprehensive plan amendment. And the original request for development at that time included residential units on the northern upland lobe and on the southern upland lobe, which is immediately behind Oasis Cove. When it got to the hearings with Commissioner Boyd and the board, they ultimately threw out the southern portion and only approved the north. The southern portion was always designated to be a compensating storage area to accommodate the fact that this development on the north was in the floodplain. So that ultimately was approved by the board, and then it came in for a rezoning, which was also approved, in a preliminary subdivision plan was approved in 2020, and that was under Commissioner Vanderlei. So this goes back 3 commissioners now. The final approval was for 57 single-family units. They're all clustered on the northern portion of the site. You have stormwater ponds that also accommodate that development on the north, and then a large compensating storage pond on the south by your neighborhood. This approval also included some right-of-way designation or dedication. You can see it here on the map, the kind of hatched area right at the intersection of Fouquet, Reams, and Summer Lake Park Boulevard. So that's ultimately, I think it's already actually been conveyed to the county, and it'll ultimately allow for this intersection to be reconfigured when the road's widened. In the next project I'll kind of touch on in the area is Windermere Springs. This one was rezoned to PD in 2018. It's 21 attached dwelling units. And to orient you, this is the LDS Church immediately to the north and to the west. So this has an access point off of Reams Road. It has interconnectivity, assuming that the adjacent RCE2 property comes in to request Horizon West designation consistent with Horizon West standards. We do have interconnectivity policies in Horizon West, so that's why you see that cross access there. But I'll just note with this one, we don't have any subdivision plans for it yet, so it's zoned, but we're a long way from seeing any development on the site. They'll still have to go through the preliminary subdivision plan, which requires a public hearing. They'll also have to go through subdivision construction plans and ultimately through platting before they can actually go vertical on the site. Another project to touch on, this is a new fire station that was recently approved by DRC, our Development Review Committee, back on April 28th, earlier this year. You can see the location map here. It's just north of your subdivision off of Reams, near the intersection of K and Summer Lake Park. There may be someone else on the call who can better address the timing of when that's going to go to permitting and break ground, but this is the layout of the prototype building, and that's a new public improvement that's going to be located in close proximity to your community. And then another request that we recently received, this one hasn't been approved yet. This is just got submitted in August of 2021. It's a new PD called Windermere Place. The request here is for 9 single-family dwelling units. We just gave them their first set of comments, and they haven't resubmitted to address those comments. They haven't responded to our comments as of yet. The process for something like this, just for the benefit of everyone on the call, once they respond to staff's comments, it'll go through another round of review until they essentially address all of those staff comments. Then it goes to our Development Review Committee, which is a staff level committee that just makes a recommendation. It then goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which makes a recommendation. That's a body that's appointed by the board. So those are volunteers in the community that are appointed by the board that make a recommendation. And then it goes to the Board of County Commissioners for final action. So whole process takes about 6 months. We're just at the start with this one, and I'm sure there'll be some public engagement associated with it. And I'm glad that we're at least able to let you guys know about it on the front end, because it's something that was recently submitted to our office. This is the proposed layout, interconnectivity to the north and south. They are showing a wetland impact on the middle of the site. Once again, the county hasn't agreed to any of this yet. This is just an initial proposal, and we're going back and forth with the applicant with specific comments and revisions that are required to this plan before we take it forward to any hearings. With that, that's all I had on the development update. If you guys have any specific questions, Lee, I don't know if you want to just jump into questions now or if you prefer to hold them until after we talk about the road widening. I'll be here, obviously, to answer any of those questions.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the road widening first and then save all the questions for the end, if that's possible.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and I'll pass it over to, I'm not sure who's going to be addressing that project, but it looks like we got some knowledgeable folks on the call here.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Raymond Williams, manager of the Engineering Division, Public Works Engineering. I have with me Roberta NG, project manager for the road widening project, and Jennifer Cummins. And Roberta is going to share some slides with you.
I have to go back one way. Are you?
No. Sure.
You have to unmute us, right?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, good. So I am going to be discussing about the road widening for Reams Road. This first slide, in green, it shows the project limits for Reams Road, which is from Summer Lake Park Boulevard to Tablefield Boulevard. And this slide also shows you that we recently completed to the east the widening of Reams Road between Tablefield to Gold Creek Trail to 4 lanes. And we have another project on the way in design, which is the Fiquet Road widening between the County Road 535 to Summer Lake Park Boulevard.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, having difficulties here. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this is what the existing conditions look like. We have an existing, Rims Road is an existing two-lane road with intermittent sidewalks and multi-use paths. There is no bicycle lanes, and the swale is drainage. I'm sorry, we're doing this. The swale, it conveys the drainage for the road. So that's pretty much what that is. In 2018, we completed a study, and the recommended alternative was to widen the road to 4 lanes, and we're going to have a 14-foot wide trail on the north side of the road and a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side of the road. When everything is done, the project is going to have lighting. It's going to have a wildlife crossing, and it's going to have trees in the median. Okay, so this is a plan view of the Oasis Cove area. And as I mentioned previously, the Fiquet Road project is on the way, and they are proposing the pond that you see next to your subdivision called Pond Rims 1. And we were asked to look to find out if that pond can also be used for Rims Road, so that we can widen it and minimize the necessity to take all the property. So we did that, and we found out that we can use it. So this pond is going to be used for both the Fiquet Road and also Rims Road. There is a couple other things I wanted to mention at your entrance of the subdivision. There are some bluish type areas that we're still trying to figure out if we need to acquire more right of way than what we have already to be able to accommodate the roadway improvements. In addition to that, I heard that you guys wanted to find out about if you guys were getting a signal at this location, and you are. We recently talked to our traffic engineering staff, and they are proposing to have a traffic signal. So we still need to design the signal and figure out what right of ways we need to take to accommodate the proposed mast arms. So we are working on that, and we're hoping to have that in the next submittal. That's probably going to be beginning of next year. One thing that I wanted to mention is that on the other side of your subdivision, we are planning to have some geotechnical work that needs to be done, because we're going to be putting a wall to be able to level the road, because that area to the south of your property, on the other side of your property, is sloping downward. So we're having to construct a wall in that area to be able to build the proposed improvements. And then one more area where we will need to have some more geotechnical work is in this area where we have some areas where we have unsuitable material. So we need to find out what are the limits for that to be able to design the road correctly. And that's all I have for the road widening.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So at this time, does anyone have any specific questions? I did see somebody dropped in the chat. Before they approve this, will they ensure that the infrastructure, so I'm assuming you're referring to any of the developments that are underway or pending or coming to the board. You're curious about the needed infrastructure like roads, schools, XYZ, which would all be addressed prior to the approval process of any future developments. Maybe Eric, you can talk a little bit about that process of how the infrastructure is connected to the approval process of future developments.
Sure, I'm glad to address that. In Horizon West, we do have a requirement for what are called adequate public facilities. Each project, when they come through the rezoning, they have to dedicate a certain amount of their upland developable acreage to essentially allow for public improvements. So there's some projects that aren't adjacent to a road that's planned to be widened, or they don't have a school site, or they don't have a park site that was originally planned within Horizon West. So those folks are required to buy credits from people who do have those areas that are required for adequate public facilities. For example, in Reams, as I showed on the Develop Cove project, they had to convey right-of-way for the expansion of the road. And they also had to convey additional right-of-way for the reconfiguration of the intersection. So that's how we essentially get the land to do these public improvements. In terms of schools, we've been fortunate recently. OCPS has really done a good job of fast tracking a lot of the new schools in Horizon West. Horizon High School is now open, so there's no capacity issue at the high school level. We've also got the middle school that's temporarily operating within the high school site, providing some additional capacity at the middle school level until the new middle school is constructed over in Village H. And then the elementary schools, it seems like they're always working on 2 or 3 of those at a time. And I believe at our last meeting, we had an update from OCPS, and they kind of ran through the schedule of what's coming from their perspective. So that's the primary way the infrastructure is funded in Horizon West. Usually it's a contribution by the developer. And then, of course, they also have to pay impact fees. And if there are specific transportation deficiencies, they have to pay a proportionate share or do road agreements to address those. So that's really how this stuff's funded out there.
Great. We have 3 questions all pertaining to traffic. Do we know when the board will know if the entrance is impacted to Oasis Cove or any of our perimeter road? Some of these colored look really close. I'm going to loop that in with the next one that also says, can you address the timeline of the road widening? And then the last question, because these are all kind of together, does the road capacity include if there is an emergency at Disney at their property? And if it had to be evacuated via Reams, let's say, World Drive and I-4 were unable to be used as exits for emergency evacuation. Raymond, can you address some of these questions?
Yes, I'll try to address them. In terms of the schedule for road construction, we're looking at 2024. That's what we're shooting for, to start construction of a roadway. We still have to complete the design and do right-of-way acquisition and, acquire all the permits that we need in order to get to that point. But we're looking at 2024. In terms of the impact to the properties, what we try to do in all our projects is to minimize impacts to existing properties. So we're in that process now, and the slide that Roberta showed you, that showed that blue area, is actually to accommodate some drainage, probably by way of a small drainage swale. We're trying to look at ways to minimize that and eliminate that, but it would be probably just a thin strip, but we're still going through that process. And we'll be, if we do need right-of-way, we will be working with our real estate agents and be approaching the subdivision regarding that. Also for the mast arms, we will need corner clips for the mast arms for the traffic signals. So, you know, that is something that we'll be approaching the subdivision for. In terms of evacuation routes, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. We'll be increasing the capacity of the road to 4 lanes from 2 lanes. And there are alternate routes through this. I'm not sure I understand the question. If in terms of evacuation routes, you know, there are alternate routes, you know, through Disney. We're increasing the capacity of the road to what was determined in the study. So, you know, the road will be in a much better capacity have a much better capacity than now for, you know, that type of situation. So I think we are, you know, bringing improvements that will accommodate that kind of event if necessary.
Raymond, real quick to address the road capacity, and I'm not sure if this is getting at what Keith is trying to ask here. By the way, everyone, I'm Commissioner Wilson's other aide. Since I didn't formally introduce myself, I apologize. For capacity, could you maybe explain what necessitated or what usually qualifies a road to be expanded from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, maybe?
We have a process that we call a roadway conceptual analysis that's done by our transportation planning group. And they look at roads that are in the transportation, the long range transportation plan, and that some of those roads will make it into our 5-year capital improvement plan. And they look at the road network and select roads that are constrained in capacity. And they do a process which look at all the traffic projections. They look at, you know, existing conditions versus what is needed in terms of safety, drainage, and all of those elements. And it's a very involved process that you know, includes a lot of public participation. There's a report that's produced at the end, and it goes to the board for approval at a public hearing. So there's a well laid out process, that very involved process that takes place. And there are certain sets of recommendations that are made at the end of that study. And that is what guides our design when it comes to our engineering division to do that design.
Thank you. Hopefully that helped explain it to Keith and anybody else wondering that question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. And in the chat, someone asked about the sidewalk. What is it meant by trail in design? And Jennifer wrote, the trail is 14 feet wide. It sounds as though it's going to be kind of like a mixed use path.
Yes, there's a multi-purpose trail that's planned on the north side of the road, and there are other sections of Reams Road and also on Ficke Road where you have a multi-purpose trail as well. So that will be all be connected, and you know, so that will be a good amenity for that general area. And there'll also be a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side as well.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions about either upcoming developments in the area or any traffic related concerns? Okay. So I am going to drop one more time the email so that you can send me an email if you have any specific questions that I can work one-on-one with you on. And yes, I just thank you all so much. It looks like Amber is asking about fire stations at an intersection. Are there any other examples of a fire station at an intersection? I'm not really sure. Well, we can definitely, you know, bring that question to our fire department, if you wanted to connect on that, you can go ahead and send me an email at district1@ocfl.net, and I can connect you to our fire rescue team. Awesome. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will be posting this on Facebook. And of course, you can email us anytime. And thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your time today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys. Thanks for having
Have a
me.
great day.
Take care.
Thank you all.